So robbery procedures. How many of you have been involved in a robbery? Raise your hand. Someone call the police over here. We have one person that's been involved in a robbery. I used to work with examiners that were involved in robberies. They'd be in the back boardroom doing their audit thing, you know. They'd hear screaming, they'd just crawl underneath the table. What do we do? Just get under the table. What I want to introduce is an idea, and I can't guarantee you that your management is going to take this idea back. But if you like the idea, I encourage you to sell them on it because A, it's free, B, it's a good idea, and C, it's a good idea. So what I found with some credit unions in Lubbock is they have a robbery manual that sits around the credit union. And it just sits there and collects dust. But if and when they ever get robbed, all they do is open it up and follow the instructions. And I think it helps because if robbery is not something you discuss all the time, having these procedures documented somewhere or a staff member, I mean your newest staff member could pull it up and start reading, okay? And the idea is to preserve evidence, okay, protect the members and the employees, and to help the police. And so I think it's a good idea. So if you want it, if you want these slides, if you want basically what is I'm calling the robbery notebook, I'll email it to you. And what I've got credit unions doing that I've done some private training for is just putting one of these binders at every branch or behind every teller line. And some of them put it in multiple places. Sometimes there's one behind the teller line and there's one in the back. And as we go through it, I think you'll understand what it is. So when you open up the robbery notebook, it says, if you are looking at this packet and have just been robbed, the following steps should be carried out in sequence, okay? Remember, do not talk to one another about the robbery until you've given your statement to the police. Sharing stories with each other may cause you to forget certain details or cause others to add erroneous facts to their testimony. So we talked about this a few years ago. One of the things that happens, what's the game called where I whisper something in someone's ear over here? What do we call it? Telephone. And by the time it gets back here, it's completely different. Okay, well the same thing happens with the facts. We decide that the robber was in blue sweatpants, and then we hear three other people talk about the red sweatpants, and when the cops come, we say, I guess he was in blue sweatpants. And so, or red sweatpants, excuse me. And so our story gets changed, and regardless of who's right, what we're wanting to preserve is your perspective, what you remember, the things you saw, the tattoo you noticed, the color of his skin, the length of his hair, etc. So this book starts off immediately by reminding you to, hey, don't go talking to one another just yet. Don't tell your war stories just yet. Okay? Procedure number 1. It says, lock all branch doors and close the blinds. Why would we do that? When do we do that? As soon as the guy hands you the ransom note, as soon as he leaves. Okay. Right. Statistically, it will be a man. But as soon as he or she leaves the building, we want to lock the door. How many of you know that Emerald Bank's branch on Hillside or on Sauncey was robbed last Saturday? Yeah. My wife and I were driving to, what's in the shopping center over there? Kohl's or some clothing store, I don't know. And there was a cop in front of Emerald National Bank. And I told my wife they had just been robbed. How did I know that? Blinds were shut. What else? Cops were there. I mean, that helps, but they could be there. Right? Sign on the door. It was hung crooked. I'm honest, I saw it from Sauncey. And I told my wife, they just got robbed. She was like, because an employee grabbed their robbery notebook, okay, ripped this sign out of it, taped it to the front door in a panic. And the sign was like this. Well, that's okay, right? But I just knew if it was a sign that said we're closed on Martin Luther King Day, it would have been hung nice and straight. Okay? So we apologize for the inconvenience, but we're temporarily closed. I didn't go up and read the sign, but I did see on the news that night that they had indeed been robbed. Okay? So step 1 is, here's what I envision. Okay? An employee grabs the notebook. An employee reads out loud. Remember, do not talk to one another about the robbery. Okay, it goes to the next slide. It says, lock all the branch doors and close the blinds. Tear out page 1. Hand it, say, Scott, here's page 1. Do what it says. Scott says, well, it says to lock all doors, close all the blinds, do not allow any employees or witnesses of the robbery to leave. If they have to leave, get their information and deploy the silent alarm. Scott is doing that while an employee with the notebook is going on to the next step. They're posting the sign on the door. Okay? So, why does it say deploy the silent robbery alarm if you have not done so already? Why isn't that step 1? What's that? So when do we deploy the alarm?
When it's safe.
After the door is locked. Why don't we do it? I mean, I got the button right here. I got one right here. Why don't I just do it when he walks in the door? We do not want to create a hostage situation, right? If the alarm is supposed to be silent and we've never tested it and maybe it's not so silent, right? What if the guy or girl decides, well, I guess I'm busted, so everybody sit down on the floor. Okay, that's not what we want. Our goal, if you have not been trained in this, your board wants nothing more for you than to give that robber what he or she wants and get them out of the building. Why is it okay to give them money? It's insured. Okay, it's not insured by NCUA, by the way. Credit unions have surety bond coverage or insurance. It's just like if you wreck your car and the insurance company pays it. If the credit union gets robbed, CUNA typically will refill your vault. Okay. So the money's insured. We got to get them out of the credit union. So when do we push the button? We say, well, when he or she leaves, we deploy the alarm. What if you look over and the teller next to you is being duct taped and someone has a gun to his or her head? I would suggest you go ahead and push the button. Okay? If there's already a hostage situation, if it's already a violent situation, we don't need to wait. Okay? We don't need to wait. We don't have to worry about creating a hostage situation. One's already been created. Okay? So, any questions about the sequence of when to push that button? If the robber comes in, silently passes a note to the teller, takes a bag full of money, and silently walks out the door, that's when we go into action. Okay? Locking the door, closing the blinds, pressing the button. Then Scott hangs the sign up, okay, or whomever. Now I'm on to page 3, which is procedure 2, and it says pick up the telephone and call 911. Do not use your cell phone. Everybody know why not to use your cell phone? We've all seen enough episodes of 24 to know that bombs are deployed using cellular devices. So even if there hasn't been a bomb threat, it's probably a good idea to just pick up a landline, call the police. The other issue is, and those of you who've called 911 from your cell phones know, you go through the whole process of where are you, and if you use a landline, they know where you are. They know where you're calling from. Okay, they have caller ID on steroids. So do not use your cell phone. State your name. What I love about this book. It says, tell them you're with Sample Federal Credit Union and you have just been robbed. I mean, it literally is walking you through this. So again, I've got the notebook. Scott hung the sign and closed the blinds. I rip it out and say, Kasha, you call the police for us. Okay? It says give them the time of the robbery. Do not hang up the phone. So now Kasha's tied up. The next employee is busy. Okay? So I've got to find someone else on my team. And I probably need to start calling some folks from the credit union. Barbara, here's procedure 3. Would you call the CEO, the VP, the IT guy, and the board, and whoever else the credit union wants to list here that feels they need to know immediately? Now, why would I include, I don't want this to go to Jason's head, but why would I include the IT guy with the CEO? Just as important? Probably not if he has the CEO, right? What might the IT guy be able to do or be in charge of? Security videos. Okay. Some videos get recorded over every so many minutes, get archived, get encrypted. If we can get that data and basically when the cops walk in, say, hey, by the way, we went ahead and downloaded the last 3 hours of video for you. That would be very, very useful. So we want to list the important folks here who to call. And this will be custom for each credit union. You know, if you don't have multiple branches, then the CEO is probably in the building, right? But if you have multiple branches, then we need to notify the main branch. Procedure 4, preserve the evidence. In order to preserve fingerprints, make notes of anything which has been touched by the robber. I saw a video that had people putting sticky notes where they thought the robber had touched things. I mean, if you're careful not to contaminate the evidence, and you put a sticky note near, I saw him touch the wall over here, I think it's probably okay. But don't go and touch that area, right? What is the most important piece of evidence to preserve? The note. The note. Why is that important? Could have fingerprints, could have a writing sample on it, right? So what they suggest you do when you take the note and you read it and it says, you are being robbed, hand me all your money. Which is typically, I watched the video of the guy at Emerald National, and that's exactly what he did. The teller adjacent to the teller being robbed didn't even know.
Wow.
I mean, she took the note, she opened her drawer, he opened up a bag, she stuck it in the bag and walked out the door. Okay? I mean, 9 times out of 10, a nonviolent robbery is going to go down just like that. So I didn't see whether or not she did correctly, but what she should have done is taken that note, dropped it on the floor, and said, yes, sir, and start putting the money in. If you hand it back to him, we've just given him the most important piece of evidence. Okay? Now, if he hands it to you and says, don't you dare drop that on the floor, then do what he or she says. But 9 times out of 10, when you drop that, they may be concerned about it, but they're ready to get out of there. Okay, they're ready to get out of there. So, try to preserve it. Same thing, there was a robbery that took place within the last year that I read about that took place through the drive-thru. How did that happen? Well, they passed a note through the tube. Okay, what should the teller have done with the note? Put it back in the tube with the cash? Sir, your receipt's included in it. Please sign. It's carbon. Press really hard. Okay, so no. Keep the note. How did he do it? It was a bomb. It was a bomb threat. He said, "Start putting money through this tube, or I'm going to blow this building up." Okay, well, tellers, keep the note. Start sending money. Okay, start sending money. Okay. Bomb threats are very, very unique in how to react, but I don't think I'd push the button until the guy drove away. Same scenario. Okay, so preserve evidence. Try not to touch anything. Rope things off. Don't let people start. Again, if we're not talking to one another, if we're not sharing war stories according to the first slide, no war stories, not yet, not till the cops come, then ideally everyone kind of goes to their own spot and starts to fill out a form that we're going to look at. Okay, so shouldn't be a lot of walking around and touching and moving things. Just everybody find a calm place and sit down. Procedure 5, distribute the suspect description form to anyone who witnessed the robbery. Okay, you should have this form. There you go. I see some of you pulling it out. You should have this form. This will be included in the packet if you guys want it. I'll email it. It's pretty much homemade, homegrown. So you can add anything you want to this form that you think would be important. But it asks for things like height, and eye color, and age, and weight, and clothing, and the vehicle, and the direction that they departed. All of this information is very, very, very valuable to the police. And I'm going to guess most of the times when the cops come in, they don't get handed 20 of these sheets. I mean, these could be completed by the time they got there. You know, you could be saying, he went west on I-40, go get him, right? So being organized in this chaotic situation, I think this book, this little binder, would be enough to just, and unfortunately, whoever picks up the book just becomes the boss. You go do this, you go do this, you hand these out. Just keep going to the next page and following the instructions, okay? So, This is where we would record what we saw or heard. And then obviously cooperate with the police. And do not, this is key, do not give out names of employees or other witnesses to your friends. You know, A and B does this amazing job of getting robbed and nobody knowing about it. And I've had 3 credit unions robbed in Lubbock, and they were, I mean, it was on Facebook and Twitter, and, you know, the employers, you wouldn't believe what happened. So just protect your credit union, its reputation, particularly things that people, reporters and things, people really want to know how much did they get? How much did they get? Credit Union Freona was robbed this year. The Hereford folks probably know, very familiar with it. It was a violent robbery. A guy came in with a gun. And, I knew everything about that robbery before I ever called the credit union to see if, I called Nancy to see if everything was okay. When I called her, I knew how much he got. I knew he'd been caught. I knew what time the robbery was. I knew what his getaway car looked like. It was a gray, not a Camaro, what's that? Charger. It's a gray Charger. I mean, I knew all that. How did I know? I just heard. So it's best if you can just let things cool off, because there's going to be a media frenzy. There's going to be your friends are going to want to know if you were there. So protect everybody as long as you can, particularly with names, right? If the robber gets caught, he doesn't need to remember Barry Lynch was the teller that pushed the silent alarm button. Emergency telephone contacts. These are good to just list in the back in case. I looked up, I tried to look up the police and fire department for Amarillo, and there's a different number for every single fire station, and there's 12 fire stations, it says on there. I don't know if you can call them directly or if you can just call 911, but whoever's putting together this book, be a good idea to talk to a policeman or a fireman and say, do we just call 911 or would it be quicker to call the fire department that's nearest us? I don't know the answer to that question. I've also listed the FBI's number in Amarillo and Lubbock, ambulance numbers, again, credit union president. Just a good place to have all that information. So let's talk about things we need to look for in a robbery. Go to your other handout that's got all the guns on the back of it. How many people in here have never held or shot a gun? It's about half and half. It's about half and half. So some of you are going to be like, I own 6 of each one of these. Why are you telling me the difference between a revolver and a automatic weapon? Well, bear with us. What kind of gun is this robber holding? Anybody know? Revolver. How do we know it's a revolver? A revolver has, the chamber is a tumbler, like in the Old West. How do we know this gun's loaded? Does anybody know how to know? You see those little things right there? Those are bullets. Okay? If it were empty, I suppose you would just see a little black hole there in the chamber of the tumbler. But I wouldn't let that change your behavior, whether you think you see bullets or not. Okay? What else can we tell about this person? Just it's a woman? I don't know the answer, but I think it's a guy. So there again, we would all want to give our own description. Ooh, who said that? Right-handed. Didn't think about that one. I've got a robbery video. Second thought, I don't have a robbery video. I like this idea of having this notebook, just because even if I were there and you said, Barry, you're the robbery expert. You did that training that day. Why don't you lead us through this? I can guarantee you, I'd be going, call the police and close the blind. I wouldn't. There would be no structure to what I was saying. It would just be like diarrhea of thought. So this book will help you to structure what's actually happening. One other thing, why is it important to close the blinds? If the cops pull up and that guy or gal hasn't left the parking lot yet, and they decide they're going to retreat back into the credit union, and they get to the front door and lo and behold, Scott did his job and the door's locked, he or she is going to be looking in windows, yelling at people to open the door, maybe even shooting through windows, and so we really don't want them to be able to see inside. Are the blinds going to stop them if they want to break? No, but they're going to offer us a little bit of protection. The other thing, going back to the incident with Amarillo National Bank, the blinds were closed when we drove by. There were customers trying to get in the building, and some of them, just as people naturally do, are going, what's going on in there? The internet says you're open. And so I think it's a good idea, too, to kind of, you don't want them to look in and see the cops and see everybody crying and see the forms being passed. So it's good if your members don't see it. I mean, the sign says, hey, we've had an emergency, we're closed, temporarily closed. That's really all they need to know until they watch the news or find out differently. What do y'all think? Any questions about robbery? I mean, I think the takeaways are when to push that button. If you're not sure when to push that button, let's talk about it now. And then locking the door is key. The reason pushing the button is not first. If you were all by yourself, I'd still say lock that door first before you push that button. Because you don't want to make yourself into a hostage. Any questions about that? I like robbery stuff. You've got a takeaway with you, a little handout, and it's similar to last year's, but there's some new things on there. It's different. Let's look at the rest of the guns. So there's two types of handguns. Okay, it's called a handgun because it fits in your hand. There's the revolver, which we saw, which has the revolving tumbler, which is the chamber. What's the other kind called? A lot of people will call them, it's a semi-automatic pistol, but a lot of people call them automatics. Well, that has the term automatic really means like in the military where you hold down the trigger and it unloads 500 bullets. Those weapons are pretty much, you can't own them as citizens of the United States. Even assault rifles, the rifles used in the recent killings in New York, are not automatic weapons. They're semi-automatic. Semi-automatic means every time you squeeze the trigger, it shoots one bullet. Okay? So a semi-automatic handgun usually holds anywhere from as little as 6 or 7 up to 15, 30 bullets, and shoot each time you squeeze the trigger. Why is it important to know the difference? You don't need to know whether it's a Glock or a Smith & Wesson or this or that, but if you could tell the cop he had a revolver, he was left-handed, I mean, that's good stuff. He had a semi-automatic pistol. Was it a revolver? No, I didn't see the Clint Eastwood tumbler thing. Okay. The other types of weapons, I think more commonly than the last two on your page, you're going to see shotguns. And a shotgun looks like a rifle, only the barrel is big enough that you can stick your thumb in it. Okay? So if someone's pointing something at you like this and you're thinking, how do I know if it's a rifle or a shotgun?
Don't stick your finger.
You care, right?
Barry, don't stick your finger in it.
Do not stick your finger in it. That's just the test. It would be... What's that? No, I mean typically you're going to have a shotgun or a concealed handgun. Now assault rifles are obviously on the rise as far as crime activity, but no. A shotgun shoots a large shell that's full of hundreds of BBs. And so really all that comes out of the end of a shotgun barrel is all those hundreds of BBs come out with a lot of velocity. Whereas a rifle or an assault rifle shoots one bullet, just like we've seen and we know what a bullet looks like. It's a jacketed projectile. One hard lump of lead comes flying out of the end of that barrel. Shotguns are more common because in close quarters, you don't really have to aim a shotgun. I mean, if you shoot a shotgun from here, by the time it gets to that back wall, the pattern's going to be as wide or wider than that door. All those BBs are going to spread out like that. Whereas a rifle's got to be aimed. So rifles are not common for robberies, especially if you got a 300-meter scope on there. You guys have looked through binoculars before where something's real close and you can't see anything. That a scope would do you no good in this case. So if you can put your finger in it, a shotgun barrel is usually like ½ an inch in diameter. I mean, really big barrel like this. If you can put your finger in it, it's probably a shotgun. So just basic gun 101. I've never seen, shot, or owned a gun ever, as far as everybody knows. As far as the government knows. Any questions about robbery?